Now, this is Fundamentals Test 2 from chapters 4 to 6. Professionalism includes which factor? A, taking responsibility, not blaming others. B, becoming a teammate with your coworkers. C, keeping your word. D, all of these. I tell you something else too. Always tell the truth. If you always tell the truth, when somebody says, I don't think you did so-and-so, all you have to do is say, yes, I did. And if you don't ever lie about anything, they'll believe you. But if they catch you in one lie, they don't believe anything else you say from now on. So always tell the truth. Types of communication include what?
All of these.
Written, verbal talking, nonverbal, all of these. Sometimes the best way you can communicate is a smile. And tell you something else too. If you see somebody else that's struggling on something that you can help with, and I'm talking about like pushing a car, you know, and they don't have enough people, go put your hand on it and give them a hand. Of course, I heard about this one lady that she was out in this parking lot and she was putting her groceries in her car and she saw this car go rolling by with nobody at the wheel. And so she jumped in there and she slammed on the brake and she put it in park. And then she saw this guy with coveralls approaching and she said, this car was rolling away. He says, yeah, I know, I was pushing it. That was in Reader's Digest, but I thought it was funny. What, nobody laughed but me? Okay, all right. Unless you've been pushing a car and had somebody do that, you know. Technician A says customer pay rate is sometimes higher than the factory flat rate. Technician B says factory flat rate times are usually longer, given more time, compared to the aftermarket than flat time. This is a complicated question, but that's Technician A only. If you look in our all data and you look up what it pays to do a particular job, it's got customer pay time and warranty time. Well, the warranty time people have kind of got you by the nose because what they're doing is they can actually decide what they're going to pay you to do this, and their times are figured on brand spanking new cars that don't have any dirt on them or anything. And so you'll probably see that in all data, the warranty time, if you want to call it that, will be something like 2.4 hours, and the customer pay time will be like 4 hours. You know, and that's typically the way that goes. Something else that happens in these dealerships is if you've got a, let's say the dealership charges $70 an hour up to 3 hours. If the job is more than 3 hours, the labor rate may go up to 75 an hour. If it's up to like above about 6 or 7 hours, it may go to $80 an hour. You know, the labor rate goes up the more hours. You know, and that's happening all over the country. That's the way they do things. That's the way it is. The independent shops don't usually do that, but dealerships do. And usually the Dealers Association, you know, does that. The thing about it is, if somebody's mechanic is tied up on your car all day long, there's a heck of a lot of other work they can't be doing while they're working on your car. You understand what I'm saying? That's one of the reasons they do that. I mean, I understand why they do it. Customers usually don't. The housekeeping duties of a technician can include what? We do housekeeping around here, don't we? All of the above. Now, sometimes the new students, whenever they see everybody else that's used to being here sweeping and mopping and everything, they sort of act like they don't know what to do, you know. Usually what you do is you do the same thing the other students are doing when they're sweeping and mopping. Which of these tactics is involved with skillful listening techniques? Yeah, that's basically eye contact with the speaker and listen with an open mind. Okay, here's what usually happens. If you're in a situation where you and the other person disagree, have that happened here? Has anybody had that where you and the other person disagree? All right, have you ever noticed that whenever the other person is laying out their case, you're not really listening to what they're saying, you're just thinking about what you're going to say next?
Yeah, really, we used to get into a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, that military stuff.
I wasn't listening to him actually when he would start talking.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, we'll wait till he's done talking, and then I'll just state my opinion. You didn't actually hear anything you actually said.
Yeah, you knew what your opinion was, and he wasn't going to change it. You decided before you started listening. Well, when you're in a, that's okay if you're talking about philosophy or something, but if you're in a situation where somebody, you know, where you're talking about how a customer should be treated or whether somebody ought to pay for whatever or something like that, I mean, just basically try to see the other person's point of view. You know, some customers, you'll get crossed up with them. A lot of the shops I've worked at, some of them don't really like all the mechanics talking to the customers very much because they're afraid the mechanic will say something that will make the customer say, well, I'm not. Well, like for instance, this one guy, was out there talking to me one day. He was leaning on the truck while I was looking at it, and typically we didn't let people in the shop, but sometimes people would come back there and stand around. Nobody'd do anything about it. And this guy was back there leaning on his truck while I was working on it. I was just doing some routine maintenance on it. He had a roofing company, and he was a kind of a, I don't know, he was always looking for something that was a freebie. And I said, I didn't even realize that he had a extended service plan on that truck that he had bought. And doggone, the truck had a lot of miles on it, a couple 100,000 miles. It still ran like brand new. But he says, if this was your truck, what would you do, you know, as far as preventative maintenance? Well, I just kind of blindsided me with that question. I said, well, the amount of miles you got on here, I might put a timing chain on it. I don't know. And I didn't know what he was going to do with that information. And he went straight to the service manager's office and says, I want a timing chain put in that truck. That man said it needs one. You know what I mean? So that was the sort of a thing. And see, the service manager then explained to him, we can't just put a timing chain in your vehicle under warranty when it's not giving any trouble. You know what I mean? You don't do preventative maintenance under warranty. If it breaks or if there's a problem or if it's making it run bad, yeah, we can do it. But just because you want a timing chain, we can't do that under warranty. And of course, see, that was one of the times when sometimes they're afraid the mechanic will say something that will cause the customer to start trying to build a case or whatever. You got to be really careful what you say to customers, you know. Let's see, when speaking with a customer, technician A uses profanity only if the customer uses foul language first. Technician B says it's okay to use profane language with younger customers because they can relate better. No, you don't use profane language. As a matter of fact, here at the college, in the college handbook, it says profanity is against the rules. You don't use profanity on the college campus. The problem with profanity is it's a habit. And it just rolls out of your mouth without you even thinking about it. It's something you basically have got to teach yourself not to do. If you wouldn't say it in a job interview, you know, don't say it. You know what I mean? If there's anybody you wouldn't say it around, don't say it, basically. That's the way that works. I was playing Battlefield 2 or something one night. I can't remember, Desert Combat. And somebody, you know, noticed for whatever reason that I wasn't using foul language or that I didn't like it. I didn't say anything to him, but he was asking me. And then he found out, you know, that my handle on my name was something that indicated I wouldn't like foul language. So he starts dropping F-bombs everywhere just because of that. And I told him, I says, look, I've worked on cars for 25 years for a living. I've worked around a lot of nasty mouth mechanics. You ain't going to say nothing I ain't heard, buddy. But if you're eating poop to try to groove somebody out, you're the person with poop in your mouth. And he never used any more foul language. Said, you're not impressing me with that. You know, I'm not shocked about that. I've heard more stuff than you know how to say, you know, especially typing it anyway. But there's no point in, you know, foul language is pretty pointless. Your words don't carry any more weight when you use foul language than they do when you use real words, you know. How many ASE tests must be passed to become a master automotive technician? 8. How many years of experience are required to get you to wear the patch? Now, they actually said they're required to receive ASE certification 2 years. You get 1 year for going through this program. You get another year for being in the field a year. Then you can wear the patch. Now, Jesse James Duke, in the last semester he was in here, he got all 8. He had the document that said he had passed all the tests and it had his name on it. That right there will carry you some weight if you go to work somewhere. If you can pass all 8 of those tests, you're going to raise some eyebrows. Now, I will tell you this, just because somebody has passed all the ASE tests doesn't make them a better mechanic than anybody else. But I've seen really good mechanics that didn't get paid as much because they didn't have ASE certification. See what I'm saying? So if you're a good mechanic and you got ASE certification, you're going to command a better salary. It's just weird.
Take it every so many years?
Huh?
Like if you got that ASE patch, you have to retake it every so many years?
5, every 5 years. I have to re-up mine every 5 years. Yeah. I've been ASE certified since about 1990, and they were, you know, pushing for it at the dealership. This local dealership over here told all of their mechanics they wanted them to go take the ASE test because they didn't have anybody that was ASE certified, and they needed ASE certified technician. And so they hit the guy, the dealer principal, who's the guy that's running the place, he paid for everybody to take the ASE tests, all 8 of them. Everybody had to go take all 8 tests. And there was some pretty good mechanics working there. One of those guys had come through here, was one of the first students I taught and graduated. And his name was Larry. And he had been working there 5 or 6 years after he graduated from here. And of all of those mechanics at that dealership that took the ASE test, he was the only one that passed any of them, and he passed 5 of them because he remembered what we covered in here. And it gave him, and those other guys had been fixing cars for 20, 30 years, you know, and all his other mechanics, and some of them were pretty doggone good. But if you're not used to taking tests, you know, that's another problem. You're just used to doing the other stuff. All got to do that. Anyway, credit for how many years of work experience may be substituted for attending automotive service training. And that's actually 1 year, which is what you get going through here. Technician should do all the following to prepare for the ASE certification, except what? A, eat a big meal. B, try to keep work schedule light the day of the test. C, have a photo ID, entry ticket, and number 2 pencils. Now that's wrong because nowadays they do it on computer, and when you go in there now, you basically got to get on the ASE website, find the test center you're going to go to, which is, I go to the one in Dothan, the Prometric Test Center. What you do is you select a day that you want to take the test where there's an open seat. You select the time of the day. You show up 30 minutes early, and you be prepared to empty your pockets, turn them inside out, put your stuff in a locker, and they go over you with a wand. They won't even let you have your watch on your arm. I was going to take some candy in there in case, you know, my blood sugar went wacky. You know, like when your blood sugar gets low, how you get, yours had never been low much, has it? If it gets low, you get sort of jittery and don't think clearly because your brain has to have sugar for fuel. Anyway, they wouldn't even let me take candy in there. I mean, these guys were tough. But what happens is you go in there and you sit down at the computer and you go through the test. And when you're done, they print out the results. And they hand them to you right then, you know. With the old paper and pencil test they used to give at that other college over in Dothan, what would happen there was you wouldn't see your results for 6 weeks. Now you see them when you walk out the door. Technician, well, anyway, you don't eat a big meal because a big meal tends to make you sleepy. Number 11, how can a technician register to take the ASE test? Nowadays, it's pretty much on the ASE website. That's the best way to do it. But they say if you want to get that question right, put any of these. Number 12, according to technicians that take the exam, which question type is the most difficult? Which kind of question do you guys like the least in here?
Getting 7 questions.
What about the A and B? Don't you love those? Why is the A and B question so aggravating?
Because it seems so similar to what the actual answer should be.
Yeah.
But there's like one variation, a slight variation to it.
My take on A-B questions is it's like 2 questions in one. Because you have to determine if technician A is right, if technician B is right, if both of them's right. There's a whole bunch of different choices there. And you got to actually see if either one of these guys is telling the truth, you know. It's like 2 true-false questions is basically what it is. And technician A says you only have to pay for a test 1 time. If you fail, you can take it again for free. What do you think about that? Technician B says a photo ID is needed to enter the test center, which technician is correct. Matter of fact, the only thing that you can take in that room with you is your ID. They will give you some scratch paper and 2 number 2 pencils in case you want to do figuring or something. 2 technicians are discussing the safe use of a wrench. Technician A says a wrench should be pulled towards you. Technician B says a wrench should be pushed away from you. Which technician is correct? That is A, but my qualification there is whoever wrote that question needed to write it a different way, because there's sometimes, and we've all known this, the ones of us that have worked on cars, sometimes the only thing you can do is push the wrench, because you cannot get on the other side of the doggone thing if something's in the way, and sometimes you have to push the wrench. The reason they're saying that is if you push it, you got all your weight behind you. If it breaks loose, you'll ram your hand into something and skin your knuckle or something. That's what they're worried about, even on the tool truck. Do you know what they used to teach on the snap-on truck? That you weren't supposed to use their snap-on ratchets to break anything loose. You were supposed to get their little breaker bar and break it loose with that, and then put your little ratchet on it and screw it off. But the older snap-on ratchets, I used to bust them all the time because they weren't really made for breaking stuff loose, you know. That's a $100 ratchet or more now, you know. I bought a snap-on ratchet and 2 spark plug sockets in 1977 off the tool truck, brand new, for $27. Yeah, you forget about that nowadays. Let me see here. Exhaust hoses should be used because one of the exhaust gases can be deadly in high concentration. Which gas is it?
Carbon monoxide.
Yeah, you don't smell it, you don't see it, but that bad air will put you down. They take little, well, I'm sure they've got devices now, but in the coal mines, they take canaries down there. And those miners watch that little canary that's in that cage, and if he keels over and dies, they leave that mine because the canary will die. I mean, it's an early warning system, you know, and that air gets bad. You won't even know you're breathing bad air. You just all of a sudden, poof, you keel over. And that's why carbon monoxide is. Newer cars, have you ever noticed how the stuff, the weeds and the grass and the flowers just grow beside the road just like crazy? Have you ever noticed that? You know why that is? Because the exhaust that's coming out of our cars now is feeding the grass. It's carbon dioxide, and that's what the grass and stuff wants. And so it just grows up a storm because it's getting all kinds of carbon dioxide blowing all over it, and that's what the grass wants. If you want to go green, make more carbon dioxide, not less. Water vapor is a more significant greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide is anyway. We can't shoot the clouds down. Okay, let me see here. The process of combustion occurring without an open flame.
Non-flame combustion.
Spontaneous combustion. If you put enough oily rags in a place by themselves, they can go through a chemical change in the heat and catch fire without anybody setting fire to them or anything. And that's just really something you got to be careful about. Eddie had that happen at Diesel. They had a bunch of greasy, oily rags all kind of piled down there in one spot, and they caught fire just all by themselves. You know, he took pictures of it and everything. You know, and that they talk about that. I've never seen that happen, but it did happen down at Diesel. Of course, if anything's going to happen, it'll happen down at Diesel.
I've seen it.
Huh?
I've seen Hay one do that one time.
Yeah. Oh, hay'll do it. And also, well, hay'll go through the heat. You ever get into fresh cut hay that's been baled, and you get in there, even in, you know, and it'll be just real hot. Even when it's not hot outside, it'll start to go through a chemical change. And let's see, which item is usually not included in a first aid kit?
Antibiotic cream.
Now you got that. You're not going to have a fire blanket in a first aid kit, okay? Number 18, proper working level is at waist height. Now, what I like to do, one of the things that's always boggled my mind, I can tell the people that have done a lot of work on their own car, because whenever I got them doing brakes or something, they'll put the car on the lift, and they'll do it right, and they'll raise it up about 18 inches off the floor, and then they'll sit on the ground to do the work. I'm thinking, why don't you raise it on up, and where you can just stand here and work on it, and you don't have to sit on the ground. They're used to sitting on the ground because that's always what they've done. You know what I mean? I mean, they're used to sitting on the grass with the thing pulled off, working on it. And, you know, just if you got a lift, use the lift. Something else, if you've got a little car like a Taurus or something, or any one of these little foreign cars that sits really low, and you're going to be there for a while, raise that doggone thing up waist high where you can stand flat-footed and work on it. You ain't got to strain your back bending over. You know what I mean? That's what that's smart people will use a lift in an ergonomic fashion. You know, it's not just when you're working under it, as you raise it up waist high. I saw a guy at the Ford place over there one time working on a little Bronco 2, and he had the sometimes they let, like on pickups, they'll let all the air out of the front tires so that it's sitting a lot lower and they don't have to, you know, climb up with their fanny sticking up in the air like I've had to do. We got a topside creeper here. I also saw a guy that was working on this little Bronco, and he had somehow or another, and I'm not saying I agree with this, but he had the backside of it raised up at about a 40-degree angle so that it was easier for him to just stand here and work on it, and he didn't have to go over and in. You know what I mean? That was at the Ford place over in Enterprise years and years ago. I mean, we don't even have Bronco 2s anymore hardly. When hammering an aluminum part, what do you need to hit it with?
Plastic mallet.
Yeah, you don't need to be banging on it with a steel hammer. Also, I thought about setting up a little workstation here so that people could learn how to swing a hammer and hit what they were swinging at, and learn how to swing and hit it good and hard. Amber's really good at swinging a hammer, you know, about being able to swing it good and hard and hit what she's swinging at. But some people have to learn how to do it. Some of the guys that I first taught, I'd say, put a pickle fork on there, and I say, all right, hit this thing. They'd go tap, tap, tap. You're not going to get it unless you hit it like you're going to kill it. You know what I'm talking about. Technician A says, uses a 3-prong electrical cords when possible. Technician B uses double insulated electrical tools. Either one of those guys is okay. Incidentally, if you see a 3rd prong that has come off of one of our battery chargers or anything out here, make sure you let me know about it, and I'll have Gene replace the end, because we want to make sure the 3rd prong is on there.